The ranch stood quiet under the scorching sun, a land far removed from the reaches of civilization. Dust clung to the air, thick and dry, as Jesse Hawk rode in on horseback. His heart pounded as he neared the dilapidated house, the last remnant of his new inheritance. But when he arrived, 3 towering women stood on the porch, their silhouettes casting long shadows. Their eyes followed him, calculating, as if they already knew everything about him, and their smiles made his skin crawl. Before he could say a word, the tallest one stepped forward. Her voice was a calm but unsettling promise. "We haven't had a small man yet. Before we dive deeper into Jesse's story, let us know where you're tuning in from, and if you're hooked by tales like this of rugged land, hidden truths, and unexpected alliances, hit that subscribe button, because tomorrow's chapter brings even more shocking twists you won't want to miss." Jesse Hawk had traveled far to claim what was rightfully his. His great-uncle's ranch, long neglected, had finally passed to him. At first, the thought of owning land in such a remote part of the frontier had thrilled him. It was his fresh start, a chance to put the mistakes of his past behind him and build something solid. But as he rode into the ranch yard, the excitement turned into a tight knot in his chest. The wind blew across the barren land, swirling the dust around him, and the sight of the old farmhouse sent a ripple of unease through him. The house was more rundown than the listing had suggested, and the isolation was more stifling than he had imagined. He dismounted, the dry heat making the air feel thick as he adjusted his hat, trying to shake off the nagging feeling that something was wrong. The place had been advertised as perfect for cattle, but the lack of any animals or signs of life raised a troubling question. Had his great-uncle been hiding something? The house seemed too quiet, too still, as if it had been waiting for something or someone. Then, out of the corner of his eye, he saw them. 3 women, standing on the porch, their gazes fixed firmly on him. Tall, unnervingly so, each of them at least 8 feet in height. They were as striking as they were intimidating, their presence casting long, dark shadows across the weathered boards beneath their feet. Each of them had the air of someone who had seen far more than most could handle, and survived to tell the tale. The tallest of the 3 stepped forward. Her dark hair was pulled back into a severe braid, and her broad shoulders gave her the silhouette of a warrior. She didn't smile, not at first, but her lips parted just enough to reveal a knowing smirk. The air around her seemed to crackle with unspoken words, and Jesse felt a chill run down his spine. "You must be the new owner," she said, her voice like smooth stone, unhurried, confident, and cold. "We've been expecting you." Jesse froze, hand instinctively reaching for the revolver at his hip. I don't think there's been any misunderstanding," he said, forcing his voice to remain calm. "I've got the deed right here." He pulled the folded document from his coat pocket, showing it to her. The official seal gleamed in the sunlight, a symbol of ownership that felt suddenly meaningless under her unwavering stare. The woman's smile widened, though it didn't reach her eyes. "Oh, we know exactly who you are, Jesse Hawk. The previous owner spoke of you often," she said, her voice dripping with something darker than simple acknowledgement. Her companions flanked her, just as imposing in their own way, their eyes never leaving him. Jesse felt his throat tighten. How could they know him? The sale had been private. His great-uncle had made it clear he wanted to move on, but he never mentioned anyone else, especially not them. "Who are you?" Jesse asked, his voice slipping slightly as his instincts screamed at him that something wasn't right. He wasn't just dealing with squatters or locals who didn't know how to leave a property alone. These women were something else entirely. "We're the ones who've been keeping this place running," the second woman said, her voice lower, rougher, with a strange emphasis on the word running. She stepped forward slightly, with a sharp glint in her eye that made Jesse's unease deepen. The third woman, shorter than the others but still a giant by most standards, laughed lightly. It wasn't a warm laugh. It was one that carried a weight of hidden knowledge, of old wounds not yet healed. "Marcus Vance," she said, her voice bitter. "The one who sold you this place? He made promises. Promises he didn't keep." Jesse's blood ran cold at the mention of the name. Marcus Vance. The man who had owned the ranch before him. He'd seemed like a decent sort, quick to sell the place when Jesse had come around, almost too quick. But how could these women know about promises? What were they talking about? The tallest woman stepped even closer, her presence almost overwhelming. "You see," she said, her eyes narrowing on him with unnerving certainty, "we've been here long before your great-uncle sold you this land. Marcus made arrangements with us. He said we'd keep it, share it if you will." And now, it's your turn to honor those arrangements. Jesse's hand moved closer to his revolver again, but this time, there was something else simmering inside him. Curiosity mixed with caution. There was more to this place and these women than he had ever imagined. Jesse's eyes flicked from one towering woman to the next, their imposing figures creating a sense of suffocating confinement in the otherwise open ranch yard. His heart hammered in his chest, though he kept his expression steady, unwilling to show the unease creeping up his spine. He had faced men before, had fought battles that left scars on his body, but these women, these giants, were a different kind of challenge altogether. The tallest one, the leader, stood with her arms crossed, her stance wide and unyielding, as if the ground beneath her feet was part of her. The air seemed to thrum with her unspoken authority. Jesse tried to keep his voice even. "I don't know what kind of game you think you're playing, but this is my property now. The transaction is legal. I've got the papers right here." He gestured to the deed, his fingers tight around the edges of the document. The woman didn't even glance at the papers. Instead, she regarded him with a smile that was far too knowing, far too confident. "Oh, we know it's yours. For now." She tilted her head slightly, her eyes never leaving his. "But that doesn't mean you understand what you've bought." Jesse's stomach tightened. He felt as if he were being tested, though he had no idea by what or whom. The ranch had seemed like a simple purchase, his escape from the complications of the world he'd left behind. But now, in the presence of these three women, it felt like he'd stumbled into something far more intricate and dangerous than he'd bargained for. The second woman, her voice deeper and steadier than the first, spoke next. "Marcus Vance made promises to us," she said, her words deliberate, as if each one carried the weight of something much older than her. "Promises that have nothing to do with your papers or your legal ownership." Jesse's grip tightened on the deed. "What promises?" he asked, despite the gnawing feeling in his gut telling him he didn't want to know the answer. A low laugh escaped the third woman, the redhead, whose fiery presence seemed to match her hair. "Promises that have to do with this land, and with us. We've been part of this ranch long before you decided to show up." Her eyes glinted with a strange amusement, as if she found some hidden joke in the situation that Jesse wasn't privy to. He stared at them, confusion and anger building within him. "I don't understand. What do you want from me? If Marcus made some kind of deal with you, it's with him, not me. I paid for this land fair and square." Helena, the leader, stepped forward, the ground beneath her seeming to shift with each of her powerful strides. "That's the thing, Jesse. It's not about what Marcus promised us. It's about what we need and what you're going to give us." Her eyes locked onto his, piercing and unwavering. "You see, the deal was never just about cattle or crops. It was about what we've built here, together." Jesse swallowed hard. The implication hung in the air like a storm cloud, dark and ominous. He didn't understand, but he knew something was off. His pulse quickened as he took an involuntary step back, his mind racing through possibilities each worse than the last. "We've been alone out here." Ruth, the second woman, said softly, almost gently, as if trying to soothe the growing tension. "For a long time. Alone, and left to our own devices." Magdalene, the redhead, looked at her companions, and then back at Jesse. "The land, the work, it's all a part of us. And now, you're part of it too." Her smile held no malice, but there was something unreadable in the way she looked at him. "We've waited for someone like you to come." Jesse blinked, trying to process the cryptic words, the sense of being pulled into something beyond his understanding. "I'm not here to play whatever game you're talking about. I'm here to work this land, alone." He couldn't keep the edge of frustration from his voice. Helena's smile was like ice calm, yet sharp. "Oh, you won't be alone, Jesse. Not if you want to keep this ranch. We're here to make sure you understand how things work out here." Jesse felt the weight of her words like a blow to his chest. He was starting to realize that the land he'd bought wasn't the simple escape he'd envisioned. There were deeper, darker forces at play here, forces tied to the land, to these women, and to promises he didn't even know existed. Magdalene stepped forward, her expression suddenly more serious. "We haven't had a small man yet," she said, her voice low but insistent. "Not one who's truly understood what it means to be here, what it takes to survive, what it takes to be part of this land and part of us." The words hung in the air, pregnant with something Jesse couldn't quite place, something that made his stomach churn and his heart race. He wasn't sure if it was the promise of something new or the fear of being trapped in a situation far worse than he could have imagined. But as he stood there, feeling the weight of the sun on his back and the unyielding stares of these three women, He knew one thing. There was no turning back now. Jesse's legs felt like lead as he turned back toward the barn, but the women's eyes were still on him, their gaze cutting through the dust and heat like sharp knives. He had told himself he wasn't going to let them intimidate him, but something in the air, something in the way they carried themselves, made it hard to breathe. The weight of their silence followed him as he made his way to the barn, where the remnants of his new life awaited. There was nothing left of the dream he'd had when he bought the place. No excitement, no adventure, just an oppressive stillness that gnawed at him. He paused at the door, hand resting on the rough wood. The women hadn't followed him yet, but he knew they were watching from the porch. The sound of his own heartbeat was louder than the chirping of the distant birds. For the first time, he wondered if he had made a terrible mistake. Behind him, he heard footsteps heavy, deliberate. Without turning around, Jesse knew it was Helena. She moved with the same authority she had displayed when she first stepped forward, like the earth itself had granted her dominion. "You don't look so comfortable, Jesse," she said, her voice smooth like a river stone. "I thought a man like you would have been more eager to get started. Or were you just hoping to be left alone?" Jesse turned slowly, facing her for the first time fully. Her size was even more imposing up close, every inch of her body a testament to years of physical labor and survival. She stood tall, chest out, hands on her hips, as if the very ground beneath her belonged to her. The others remained on the porch, but their eyes were still on him, the weight of their attention pressing down like a 100-pound blanket. "I didn't come here for company," Jesse muttered, but there was something in his voice that made it sound more like a question than a statement. He wasn't sure if he was talking to her or to himself. The last thing he wanted was to be drawn into whatever strange arrangement they were trying to push him into. Helena's lips curled into a smile that had nothing to do with amusement. "Nobody comes out here for company, Jesse. You came for a fresh start, and that's what you're going to get. But don't mistake what we're offering you as something you can walk away from. You'll find that this place takes more than it gives." Jesse tried to steady his breath, but the words caught in his throat. "I paid good money for this land," he said, though his voice lacked the conviction it once had. "I have the deed, and I'm not asking for your permission." She took a step closer, and Jesse involuntarily stepped back. The space between them felt charged, as though the air itself was growing thicker with each passing moment. Her eyes never left his, and in them, he saw something he hadn't expected, something that wasn't just authority, but a deep, worn sadness. "It's not about the deed," Helena said softly, her voice dropping to a near whisper. "It's about what this land means to us, what it's always meant. The ranch is just a shell, Jesse. It's the blood, the sweat, the people that give it life. And you've walked into the middle of something much bigger than you think." Jesse's heart thudded in his chest, and he found himself unable to move. Her words were like an echo, bouncing off the walls of his mind, until the weight of them began to settle on his shoulders. It wasn't about the land. It was about the women, about what they had endured, what they had built here, and what they wanted from him. He looked back toward the porch, where Ruth and Magdalene stood, unmoving but watching. They hadn't said a word since their cryptic proposition earlier, but Jesse could feel their eyes digging into him like hot brands. "You've been living here," Jesse said, his voice cracking slightly. "For how long? How is this even possible?" Ruth's deep voice came from behind him, soft yet firm. "We've been here long enough to know what it takes to make a place like this thrive. Long enough to understand what it means to work the land, to grow something from nothing." Magdalene stepped forward, her eyes locked on Jesse as she spoke, her tone warmer now, but just as insistent. "But we haven't been alone, Jesse. Not until now. Marcus, he promised us something more, something real. And now, we need you to help us finish what he started." The words echoed in Jesse's mind as he turned to face them. They weren't asking for just his help with the land. They were asking for something deeper, something that wasn't just physical. He could see it in their eyes, the quiet, unspoken understanding that bound them together in a way that made him feel like an outsider. A man who was neither here nor there, caught between his desire for the land and the strange pull these women had on him. Jesse swallowed hard. "What is it that you want, then?" he asked, the question heavy in the air between them. Helena's smile returned, but it wasn't comforting. It was like the smile of someone who had lived too long in the shadows. "We want you to understand, Jesse. Understand what it means to belong here, to us, to this place." Jesse stood frozen, trying to piece it all together. The situation, the women, the land, it was all so much more complicated than he had imagined. And as the heat of the afternoon sun beat down on him, Jesse realized he was standing at a crossroads. Whatever happened next, there would be no turning back. The evening sun cast a golden hue across the ranch, turning the dust and dried grass into a shimmering expanse that seemed to stretch on forever. Jesse sat on the porch, his elbows resting on his knees as he stared at the land, his land, or so he thought. But now, after everything the women had said, it didn't feel like his at all. It felt more like a place that had claimed him, that was testing him, pulling him in with unseen threads. Helena, Ruth, and Magdalene had kept their distance after their last conversation, though their presence never quite faded. Jesse felt their eyes on him as he worked, the tension between them as palpable as the air itself. The silence of the ranch was unsettling, and every creak of wood or rustle of wind felt loaded with expectation. Just as he thought he might find some peace in the rhythm of his work, Helena appeared again. She moved with her usual grace and authority, stepping out from the shadow of the barn, her eyes locked on him. For the first time, Jesse noticed the subtle weariness in her step, the fatigue hidden behind the ironclad composure she always carried. She stopped a few feet away, and Jesse instinctively braced himself. There was something in the air, something he couldn't shake, like the calm before a storm. "We need to talk, Jesse," she said, her voice low and steady, but there was a heaviness to it that made Jesse's stomach twist. He stood, wiping his hands on his jeans, and met her gaze. The unspoken tension between them felt suffocating. "What about?" Jesse asked, trying to keep his tone neutral, though his nerves were beginning to fray. Helena reached into her jacket pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper, its edges worn, the folds creased with age. She held it out to him, and Jesse took it hesitantly. The paper felt thick, heavier than it looked, and the official seal at the top made his pulse quicken. This wasn't just some informal document, it was something that carried weight, something that had been in place long before he arrived. "This," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, "is the contract Marcus left behind. The one that binds you to us." Her eyes never left his face. Watching him closely, as if reading his every reaction, Jesse unfolded the paper, scanning the text. At first, the words were just legal jargon, the kind of language that seemed designed to make a man's eyes glaze over. But as he read further, his stomach sank. There were clauses in there he hadn't expected, vague, unsettling clauses that spoke of shared labor, mutual obligations, and something deeper, something personal. His hand trembled slightly as he continued reading. The contract wasn't just about ownership, it was about responsibility. A responsibility to the women, to the land, and to some unspoken bond that seemed to stretch back through years of history. But the most troubling clause of all was the final one. "And the future owner shall take on all obligations previously agreed upon by Marcus Vance, including those of intimate nature." Jesse's throat went dry, and he looked up at Helena, whose expression had remained unreadable throughout the entire exchange. "What is this?" he asked, his voice strained. The words were foreign, but they made sense in a way that left him unsettled. "What kind of contract is this?" Helena's gaze softened for a moment, but the edge in her voice remained sharp. "It's the kind of contract that ties us together, Jesse. We made promises to Marcus, and he made them to us. Promises about the land, about what it means to be part of something bigger than just a business deal." Jesse shook his head, his mind spinning. "But this is insane. I didn't sign anything like this. I came here to work. I came here for a fresh start, not to get dragged into some arrangement like this." Helena's gaze hardened again, and she took a step closer, the space between them closing in a way that made Jesse's pulse race. "You don't get it, do you? This place isn't just about work, Jesse. It's about everything. About survival. About building something real. Something that can't be bought or sold. We've done the hard part. Now it's your turn." Her words hung in the air, their weight pressing down on Jesse like an invisible force. He had never imagined that his fresh start would bring him into the heart of something so complex. But as he stared at the contract, and then at Helena's unwavering gaze, he realized that there was no escaping it. Whether he liked it or not, he was already part of this place and part of whatever twisted arrangement Marcus had left behind. The silence stretched between them, thick and heavy. Jesse felt his stomach knot. "I didn't ask for this," he said, his voice quieter now, more defeated than he cared to admit. Helena didn't flinch. "None of us asked for this," she replied, her voice carrying an edge of something vulnerable, something that made Jesse hesitate. "But we've all had to live with it. live with the consequences of promises made before any of us were born. Marcus may have been the one to sell the land, but he wasn't the one who built it. Jesse's mind raced. He looked down at the contract again, then back at Helena. "So what now?" he asked, his voice raw. "What do you want me to do?" Helena's lips curled into a tight smile, but there was no joy in it. "Now, you do what Marcus failed to do. You honor the contract. You become part of this place. Part of us." The words hung in the air, thick with finality. There was no escaping this. Not now. The evening descended slowly, casting long, angular shadows across the ranch. The air grew heavier, as if the land itself were sighing in resignation, pulling in the heat of the day. Jesse sat on the porch, staring into the vast horizon, his mind swimming with thoughts of the contract, the women, and the strange promises that had been made long before his arrival. His fingers curled around the edge of the old rocking chair beneath him, its wood worn smooth by years of use, yet still stubbornly solid. Helena's words echoed in his head, reverberating against the walls of his mind, like the dull thud of a hammer on stone. You become part of this place. Part of us. How was he supposed to take that? What did that even mean? These weren't just landowners asking for a fair deal. They were claiming something deeper, something far more personal than he had ever bargained for. He let out a long breath, trying to shake off the unease, but it clung to him, thick and suffocating. A movement at the edge of the yard caught his eye. It was Ruth, walking toward him with her usual quiet grace. Her features were soft, her eyes bright but guarded, and there was an air of serenity around her that contrasted sharply with the storm swirling inside him. Ruth had always been the one who spoke least, but when she did speak, her words carried weight. She was the quiet one, the steady one, the one who seemed to understand more than she let on. Jesse had the feeling that she was the one who held the threads of the ranch together, even when everything else felt on the verge of falling apart. She stopped a few feet from him, standing still, as if weighing whether to approach further. The silence between them felt different than it had before, now laced with something more fragile, more real. "You've been thinking about the contract, haven't you?" Ruth's voice was low, her tone soft, but the directness of the question made Jesse flinch. He nodded, unable to meet her eyes at first. "I don't know what to think, Ruth. I didn't sign up for any of this. This isn't what I came here for. I thought I was buying a ranch, a piece of land, not a family." Ruth's lips curled into a small smile, but it was tinged with sadness. "It's never just land, Jesse. Not here. Not anywhere." She sat beside him on the steps, the space between them filled with the soft hum of the evening insects. There was something oddly comforting about her presence, though Jesse couldn't quite place it. He had no reason to trust these women, yet here they were offering him something he had never imagined in his wildest dreams. "You're wondering why we've been so patient with you," Ruth continued, her gaze focused on the far-off horizon. "Why we haven't forced you into anything. We could have made things harder for you, but we haven't. Not yet." Jesse's throat tightened. "Why haven't you?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. "Why are you waiting for me to figure it out?" Ruth's eyes met his then, her gaze deep and intense. "Because we want you to understand what it means to be here, to truly understand. This place isn't just a piece of land. It's alive. It's been shaped by people, by us. And now you're part of it. Whether you like it or not, you're already in this with us." Jesse's heart raced, his breath catching in his chest. "I don't know if I can. I don't know if I want to be part of anything like this," he said, the words tasting bitter on his tongue. His fingers gripped the edge of the step beneath him as he looked away, unable to meet her gaze for fear of what he might see there. Ruth's voice softened, her words almost a whisper. "We're not asking you to do anything you're not capable of, Jesse. This isn't about taking something from you. This is about giving you something you didn't know you needed. We've all been broken in some way, in some form. But together, we've built something stronger than any of us could have on our own." Jesse swallowed hard, feeling the weight of her words press down on him like a stone. The warmth of the evening sun was long gone, replaced by the cool, creeping shadows of the night. And yet, as the darkness crept in around him, he couldn't ignore the feeling that something in him had shifted. A part of him that had been closed off for so long, buried under years of solitude and regret, was slowly opening. Ruth turned to him fully, her hand resting lightly on his arm, a touch that was strangely grounding. "I'm not saying this will be easy," she continued, her eyes searching his face, "but I am saying it's worth it. If you can let yourself trust us, you'll see. You'll understand. Jesse felt a shiver run through him as her touch lingered. The air was thick with unspoken tension, the kind that had built between them since the moment he had stepped onto the ranch. But this time, it didn't feel like a trap. It felt like a bridge one he wasn't sure he was ready to cross. "What if I can't trust you?" he asked, his voice low and rough. Ruth's gaze softened, and for the first time, Jesse saw something vulnerable in her eyes. "Then you'll walk away. You'll leave. But you'll leave knowing that this place, this land, will always be a part of you." Jesse looked down at her hand on his arm, the warmth of it a stark contrast to the chill of the night air. He didn't know what he was supposed to feel. What was he supposed to do? He had come here to escape, to build a life on his own terms. But everything about this place, about these women, was pulling him in, challenging every wall he had ever built around himself. The moment stretched on, heavy with possibility, thick with the weight of what was to come. And somewhere deep inside him, he knew that there was no turning back. Whatever choice he made, it would change everything. Forever. The days passed in a strange haze, a blur of heat and dust, broken only by the steady rhythm of the land. Jesse spent his time working the fields, trying to clear his mind and find some semblance of normality amidst the chaos that had overtaken his life. But no matter how hard he worked, the weight of Helena's words, Ruth's touch, and Magdalene's cryptic laughter never seemed to leave him. It was as if the land itself was pulling him deeper into its grip. Each evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, the women would find their way to him. Sometimes it was Ruth, her steady presence a comfort in the midst of his uncertainty. Other times it was Magdalene, her fiery spirit a constant reminder of the tension crackling between them. But it was always Helena who loomed the largest, her towering figure and sharp gaze impossible to ignore. And with each passing day, Jesse felt himself becoming more and more entangled in whatever strange arrangement the women had with the land and with each other. That evening, as Jesse worked late into the twilight, a familiar voice called out to him from the edge of the field. He didn't need to turn to know it was Helena. "We need to talk," she said, her voice carrying across the distance with a calm authority that made Jesse's stomach tighten. He didn't answer immediately, but after a moment, he set down his tools and walked toward her. She was standing at the edge of the field, bathed in the golden light of the setting sun, her silhouette both imposing and graceful. Jesse stopped a few feet from her, hesitant. "What is it, Helena?" he asked, his voice rough, tired. "What more do you want from me?" Helena didn't immediately answer. Instead, she took a slow step closer, her eyes searching his face, as if she were reading him, scrutinizing him in a way that made him feel both exposed and small. "The truth is, Jesse," she said softly, her voice carrying the weight of something old, something heavy. "We haven't been entirely honest with you." Jesse felt a knot form in his chest. There it was, the admission he'd been waiting for, though he wasn't sure if he was ready to hear it. "We've been living here for a long time," she continued, her voice low but steady. "And in that time we've made certain arrangements." She paused as though searching for the right words. "Arrangements with Marcus. Arrangements that have kept us here, alive." Jesse frowned, his gaze sharpening. "What kind of arrangements?" Helena's expression darkened slightly, a flicker of something dangerous flashing across her eyes. "The kind of arrangements that go beyond what you understand. This land, this ranch, it's not just a place for cattle or crops. It's part of something larger, something ancient." Jesse felt a cold shiver run through him. There it was again, that feeling of something he couldn't grasp, something hovering just out of reach. Helena stepped closer, her presence overwhelming. "Marcus knew that. He understood it. That's why he promised us he'd help. That's why he promised us." She hesitated, her jaw tightening. "He'd pay our debt." "Debt?" Jesse asked, confusion clouding his thoughts. "What debt?" "The debt of flesh," she said simply, as though the words held no weight. But Jesse could feel the power behind them. Jesse recoiled slightly, taken aback. "What the hell are you talking about?" Helena's eyes never left his, and for the first time, Jesse saw a flicker of something raw beneath the cold, controlled exterior. "This place, it demands more than work, more than labor. It demands a bond, Jesse. A bond of flesh, of blood, of partnership." Jesse's stomach churned. "You mean?" Helena's lips curled into a tight smile, though there was no warmth in it. "I mean that Marcus didn't just promise us land and cattle. He promised us his loyalty. And when he ran, when he sold this place out from under us, he left us with nothing. No land, no future, just a debt that we couldn't pay." The weight of her words settled heavily on Jesse's chest. "And now you want me to pay it?" he asked, his voice hoarse. Helena nodded slowly, her eyes never leaving his. "You're the one who bought the land, Jesse. You're the one who has the deed. You're the one who's inherited Marcus's promises." The silence stretched between them, thick and suffocating. Jesse's mind raced as he tried to process the enormity of what she was saying. He had come here for a fresh start, to escape his past, to build something new. But now, it seemed as though his past had followed him here, wrapped in the form of these three women, bound to the land in ways he couldn't even begin to understand. "I didn't ask for any of this," he said, his voice cracking under the strain of his frustration. "No," Helena replied, her voice calm, almost sympathetic. "But that doesn't change the fact that it's now yours. You've inherited more than just a piece of land, Jesse. You've inherited us, and the debt we owe." Jesse's chest tightened as he stood there, the weight of their eyes on him, the weight of the land, the weight of promises made and broken. He had come here thinking he could escape, but now, it felt like he had walked straight into a trap of his own making. He stared at Helena, his mind reeling, but in the depths of her gaze, he saw something he hadn't expected: desperation. It wasn't just about the land, or the promises Marcus had made. It was about something much more primal, something that had been growing beneath the surface all along. Jesse swallowed hard, the words almost choking him. "What do you want from me?" Helena's eyes softened for just a moment before she spoke, her voice low and firm. "We want you to honor Marcus's debt, Jesse. We want you to join us, truly join us. Not just as an owner of the land, but as part of it, part of us." The words hung in the air, heavy with a meaning Jesse wasn't sure he was ready to understand. But as he looked at Helena, and then at the others who had come to stand behind her, he knew that whatever happened next, nothing about his life would ever be the same. Jesse woke before dawn the next morning, his mind already racing with the events of the previous day. The ranch was eerily quiet, the soft hum of the wind through the grass the only sound that filled the air. He could see the faint outline of the barn in the distance, silhouetted against the growing light of day. But the land felt different now. He felt different. It wasn't just the contract, or the debt, or the strange promises made by Marcus. It was something deeper, something elemental. The women had a claim on this land on him whether he liked it or not. Jesse sat on the edge of his bed for a long time, his boots untied, his hands hanging between his knees. The walls of his small room felt as if they were closing in on him, pressing against him from all sides. Every choice he had made in the past few weeks seemed to lead him back to the same point, a crossroads. Part of him wanted to leave, to get on his horse and ride away from this place, from these women, from everything. He had his money, his freedom. All he had to do was turn his back and disappear into the night. But another part of him, a darker, more uncertain part, was beginning to understand. He wasn't sure what it was, but something about the women, about the land, about the strange bond they had formed with him, was pulling him in. He had never felt such a pull before, never experienced anything that made him feel so alive and terrified at the same time. The contract wasn't just a piece of paper, it was a call, a demand. With a sigh, Jesse stood up, his mind still heavy with the weight of his decision. He had to confront it. He couldn't keep running. By the time the sun rose, he was standing outside the farmhouse, staring across the ranch with a new sense of resolve. The women were there, waiting for him. They were always waiting for him, but today, they wouldn't see fear in his eyes. They would see something else. Helena stood near the barn, arms crossed, her posture as imposing as ever. Ruth was beside her, quiet as always, but there was something in her eyes that betrayed a flicker of anticipation. Magdalene, as usual, was the most approachable, though the sharpness in her gaze suggested that she was just as committed to the outcome as the others. Jesse took a deep breath and walked toward them, his steps steady, his back straight. "What do you want from me?" he asked, his voice firm, no longer a question but a demand. Helena stepped forward, her gaze piercing, but there was no smile on her lips today. "What we want, Jesse, is simple." She let her words hang in the air for a moment. "We want you to stay." Jesse felt a shiver run through him at the weight of those words. He had thought, deep down, that this was coming, but hearing it spoken aloud made everything feel more real, more inevitable. Ruth spoke then, her voice soft but filled with an intensity that made Jesse pause. "We've built something here, Jesse. It's not just about cattle or crops. It's about trust. It's about what this land has given us, and what we can give to it." what we can give to each other. Magdalene's laugh broke through the tension, light and almost teasing, but there was a seriousness beneath it. You think we're just asking you to stick around and keep the land running? No, Jesse. We're asking you to be a part of this, to really be a part of us, to make something of this place together. Jesse looked at them, his mind swirling. They wanted more than just a business deal. They wanted a bond, a partnership, but one that went deeper than anything he had ever known. And as he stood there, facing them, facing the land that had already begun to feel like home despite everything, he realized that part of him had already begun to accept it. This wasn't about ownership. It wasn't about managing a ranch. It was about something much more visceral, something tied to blood, to flesh, to the raw pulse of life that coursed through the earth beneath his feet. I'm not a fool, Jesse said slowly, his gaze flicking from one woman to the next. I know what you're offering me, and I know what it means, but I need to understand why. Why me? Why now? Helena's eyes softened, her features almost imperceptible in the growing light of the day. Because, Jesse, you're different from the others. You came here for a reason. You didn't come to take. You came to build. That's what we need. Someone who's not afraid to take risks. Someone who understands that true partnerships aren't built on promises, but on something deeper, something you can't buy, and something you can't walk away from. Jesse's heart thudded in his chest. He knew they were right. He had been running from something for so long, running from the mistakes of his past, running from the loneliness he had never fully acknowledged. But here, in the shadow of these women and this land, he was beginning to understand something more. What if I can't do it? He asked, his voice softer now. The question wasn't about the land, it was about him. What if I can't live up to whatever this is? Ruth moved closer, her presence grounding him like the earth beneath their feet. You don't have to be perfect, Jesse. You just have to show up. Just be willing to try. Magdalene stepped forward then, her fiery gaze burning through the air between them. And if it doesn't work, then we'll figure it out together. But we won't know until we try. Jesse took a deep breath, feeling the weight of their words press down on him. They weren't asking for him to be anyone he wasn't. They were asking for him to be real, to step into something bigger than himself, something that would change him forever. And as he stood there, in the shadow of these three remarkable women, Jesse realized that he couldn't turn away. Not now. Not after everything. He nodded, his heart racing, but a sense of calm settling over him. All right, he said, his voice steady now. Let's do it. Together. The air around them seemed to shift in that moment, the weight of the unspoken understanding settling in. Jesse had made his choice. And in doing so, he had stepped into a new life, one that would challenge him in ways he could never have imagined. But it was his now. And whatever came next, he would face it, not alone, but with them. The days blurred together after Jesse's decision. The ranch, once a distant dream of solitude and independence, had become something else entirely. It was no longer just his. It wasn't just about the work, the endless tasks of clearing land, mending fences, and managing the few cattle that had been left behind. No, it was something deeper. A connection had formed, not just with the land, but with the women Helena, Ruth, and Magdalene. Every day now felt like a delicate balance, a dance between him and the land, between him and them. It wasn't just about labor anymore. They were part of him, in a way he couldn't quite explain. He had come here expecting to find a place where he could escape his past, but what he had found instead was something far more complicated, something that wrapped itself around him like the very earth he worked. Jesse's mornings were filled with the usual grind, feeding the livestock, repairing the irrigation channels, and working the land. But there was a new weight to it, a weight that felt both burdensome and freeing at the same time. The women were always there, close by. Their presence felt even when they weren't physically near. They had become part of the landscape, part of the rhythm of life on the ranch. But as the days went on, something shifted. The land was no longer just a place he was working to make his own. It had become a test, a constant reminder of the choices he had made. And with each passing day, the choices grew heavier. One evening, as Jesse worked late into the night, a familiar voice broke through the quiet of the ranch. He turned to find Helena standing at the edge of the barn, her silhouette framed by the light of the setting Sunday. She had a certain stillness about her, the kind of stillness that made it clear she wasn't just standing there to watch the sunset. She had something to say. "Jesse," she said softly, her voice cutting through the silence. "We need to talk." Jesse wiped the sweat from his brow, feeling the familiar weight of unease settle in his stomach. He walked over to her slowly, his boots crunching against the gravel of the yard. The air was thick with the heat of the day, but there was a coolness in Helena's eyes that sent a chill down his spine. "What's on your mind?" he asked, his voice steady, though he could feel the tension rising in his chest. Helena's gaze softened slightly, but there was no mistaking the seriousness in her eyes. "You've been here long enough now, Jesse. Long enough to understand what we've built, and long enough to see that this place isn't just a piece of land. It's a life. A life we've been trying to hold on to, despite everything." Jesse stood silent, unsure of what she meant, but he could feel it. He could feel the weight of her words, the truth behind them. He had thought that by staying, by becoming part of this strange family, he could escape his own burdens. But instead, he had inherited them. All of them. "I didn't come here for this," Jesse said quietly, his voice raw with a vulnerability he hadn't shown since his arrival. "I didn't come here to be part of something like this. I just wanted to start fresh. But I can't escape what's here, can I?" Helena took a step closer, her gaze never leaving his. "No," she said softly. "You can't. You made a choice, Jesse. And that choice led you here, to us. And now," she trailed off, letting the silence stretch between them. "Now you're part of this, part of what we've built, part of what Marcus left behind." The words hit Jesse like a physical blow, knocking the wind from his chest. He had known, deep down, that this would be the price. But hearing it out loud, from her, made it feel more real, more final. "I've tried to make sense of it," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "I've tried to understand what I'm doing here, why I'm here, and every time I think I'm getting it, something else pulls me back, deeper and deeper, like I'm stuck in a place where there's no way out." Helena stepped even closer, until she was within arm's reach. There was no fear in her eyes, only a quiet understanding. "There is no way out, Jesse. Not anymore. Not for any of us. Marcus knew that, and we knew it too. That's why we never tried to leave. We're bound to this place, and to each other. There's no turning back from that." Jesse felt the weight of her words settle over him like a storm cloud. "So, this is it then?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. "I'm here for good?" Helena nodded slowly, her eyes intense. "Yes, you're here for good, and you've already given more of yourself to this place than you realize. We've all made sacrifices, Jesse, and we've all paid the price. But together, we've built something that no one can take from us." Jesse looked down at his hands, the calluses from the work he had done over the past few weeks a reminder of how much he had already invested physically, emotionally. The weight of it was suffocating, but beneath the pressure, he also felt something else. A sense of connection, of belonging. It was terrifying, yes, but there was a part of him that wanted it, needed it. And despite everything, he couldn't deny it any longer. He looked up at Helena, his heart pounding in his chest. "And if I don't want to stay? If I decide this isn't what I want?" Helena's expression softened for just a moment, her gaze filled with something like sympathy. "Then you leave, Jesse. You walk away and you never look back. But I think you already know, deep down, that you can't do that. You've already made your choice, and once you've made it, there's no turning back." Jesse stood still, the weight of her words pressing down on him. The crossroads had come again, only this time. It wasn't just about the ranch. It was about him, about who he was becoming, about what he was willing to sacrifice for the life he had chosen. The path ahead was uncertain, but one thing was clear. There was no way back. Whatever came next, he would face it not alone, but with them. The days had grown longer, the nights colder, as the ranch settled into a strange rhythm. Jesse no longer felt like an outsider. The work, though endless and grueling, had become second nature to him. The land, once an imposing stranger, had softened beneath his hands, as though it had accepted him as one of its own. The sweat, the labor, the fatigue, they all became a part of him, a part of the strange life he had found here. But with that acceptance came an understanding, one that was both exhilarating and terrifying. Jesse could feel the power that the land and the women held over him, a force that was both natural and unnerving. The more time he spent here, the more he realized how deeply entwined they were with the very essence of this place. The promises that Marcus had made, the debts that hung over them, they were all rooted in something ancient, something that Jesse had yet to fully comprehend. But one thing was clear. The power they wielded wasn't just physical. It was something deeper, something tied to the land itself. It was late one evening when the truth finally began to hit Jesse with full force. He had been working in the fields all day, his muscles sore from the labor, his body covered in the grime of the land. As the sun began to set, casting an orange glow across the horizon, he heard footsteps behind him. He didn't need to turn around to know who it was. Helena stood a few feet away, her posture still as commanding as ever, her gaze sharp. But this time, there was something different in her eyes, a kind of intensity that made Jesse's stomach tighten. "You're starting to understand, aren't you?" she said, her voice low, almost contemplative. Jesse stopped what he was doing, wiping his hands on his pants before turning to face her. He could feel the weight of her words, heavy in the air between them. "I think I am," he replied, his voice rough with the fatigue of the day. But underneath, there was something more, a recognition. "This place, it's not just land, it's power. You've all built something here, and I've become part of it." Helena nodded slowly, her expression unreadable. "Yes, but it's more than that. This land isn't just fertile soil and wide open space. It's a source of life, a source of power. And you," she paused, her gaze intense, "you're now tied to it, tied to us, whether you like it or not." The words landed like a blow, but Jesse wasn't surprised. He had known, on some level, that there was something more to this place. The way the land seemed to breathe with life, the strange pull he felt toward the women, it all made sense now. He had entered into something far deeper than just a business transaction. He had entered into a bond, a pact, with the very land he was trying to tame. Jesse stepped forward, the weight of it all settling heavily on his chest. "And what if I don't want to be tied to it?" he asked, his voice quiet but filled with a quiet defiance. Helena didn't flinch. "Then you leave," she said simply. "But you know as well as I do that there is no leaving now. Once you've made your choice, once you've taken that first step into this life, there's no going back. The land won't let you. We won't let you." Jesse felt the truth of her words settle deep inside him, a truth that he had been avoiding, denying, ever since he had first set foot on this ranch. The land had claimed him. The women had claimed him. And in a way, he had claimed them back. The power was shared, but it wasn't equal. They held the greater portion, and he was slowly learning what that power meant and what it would cost him. "Is that what you all want?" Jesse asked, his gaze searching her face. "Power over me? Over this place?" Helena's expression softened, though there was no warmth in it. "It's not about power, Jesse. It's about survival. It's about what we've built here, what we've fought for. And it's about trust. We trust you. We've seen you work. We've seen you struggle. You've proven yourself. But there's a price," Jesse said, the words coming out almost in a whisper, as if he were finally understanding the full scope of it. "There's always a price." Helena nodded. "Yes, there's always a price. But what you don't understand yet, Jesse, is that the price isn't just yours to pay. It's ours too. We've all sacrificed something to keep this land alive, to keep this family intact. And now you're part of that, whether you like it or not." Jesse's mind raced as he looked at her, the pieces of the puzzle finally coming together. The strange, almost mystical bond between the women, the way they moved together as if they were a single entity, the power they wielded over him, it was all part of this greater force that tied them to the land. The land was more than just earth and soil. It was alive. It was a living, breathing entity that had claimed them, just as it had claimed him. And the cost of that power, the cost of being part of something so deep and consuming, was something he was only beginning to understand. "I never asked for any of this," Jesse said, his voice tinged with frustration, his heart pounding in his chest. "But I'm here, and I'm part of it now." Helena's eyes softened just slightly, her gaze holding a mixture of sympathy and something far deeper. "We never asked for it either, but we've survived, together, and now you're a part of that survival. You don't have to like it, Jesse, but you can't change it. This is who we are. This is who you are now." The words hung in the air, heavy with finality. Jesse looked at the land, the ranch, the women, and realized that there was no turning back. The price had been paid. He had made his choice, and now, he had to live with it. The power of the land was not just in its soil or its reach, it was in the bond they had forged, and it was a bond that Jesse had become irrevocably tied to. There was no way back now, not for any of them. The days that followed were a blur, a mixture of work and quiet moments that felt both familiar and foreign. The ranch, with its sprawling fields and weathered barns, had become Jesse's world. There was no going back to the life he had once imagined for himself, no escaping the pull of the land, or of the women who had become an integral part of his existence. Jesse had come here seeking freedom, but what he had found instead was something far more complex. The freedom he had hoped for was replaced by a different kind of bond, a connection to the land, to the women, to something older and more primal than he could have ever expected. The promise of ownership, the dream of independence, had been swept away by something far more powerful. A family built not of blood, but of shared purpose, shared history, and an unspoken understanding that could never be broken. The mornings were spent working alongside Helena, Ruth, and Magdalene, the rhythm of their labor a constant reminder of the life they had built together. The work was hard, but it was honest, and it was no longer just about survival. It was about growth, about creating something that would last, something that would endure long after they were gone. There were moments of quiet, too. Evenings spent around the fire, the warmth of the flames casting flickering shadows on the ground as they spoke of things that didn't need to be said aloud. They had all suffered in their own ways. They had all paid a price. But now, they were here together. They were stronger because of it. And in those moments, Jesse felt something shift inside him. The uncertainty, the doubt, the nagging feeling that had haunted him since his arrival began to fade. He wasn't just a part of this ranch anymore. He was a part of something bigger, something that transcended the land itself. He had found a place in the world, a place where he belonged. One afternoon, as they worked together in the fields, Jesse looked up at the women, his heart heavy with a mixture of gratitude and understanding. They were no longer strangers, no longer figures of mystery and power. They were family, partners, equals. "Do you ever regret it?" Jesse asked, his voice quiet but steady. "All of this. The land, the bond, the promises." Helena, who had been working beside him, paused for a moment, her gaze distant as she looked out over the land they had nurtured. "Regret is a luxury we don't have," she said softly, her voice carrying the weight of years spent in this place. "But no, I don't regret it. Not anymore." Ruth, who had been working further down the row, looked up and smiled, though there was a sadness in her eyes. "Regret doesn't change anything," she said. "All we can do is keep moving forward. Together." Magdalene, who had been standing by the barn, her fiery red hair catching the light of the setting sun, laughed softly. "Besides," she said, her smile mischievous, "we've built something beautiful here, and there's no going back." Jesse looked at them then, really looked at them, and for the first time, he felt at peace. The land beneath his feet, the bond they shared, it was all part of something that was bigger than him, bigger than any of them. It was a future they had all built together, and it was one he would never walk away from. As the sun began to set, casting a warm golden light over the ranch, Jesse stood with the women, looking out at the land they had made their own. It was a strange feeling, standing there both heavy and light at the same time. The weight of the past, of all that had been sacrificed, was still there. But it was no longer a burden. It was a foundation. They were all standing on it now. Together, Jesse's heart swelled with a sense of purpose, of belonging. The future, whatever it held, was theirs to shape. And as he looked at the women, he knew that they would face it together. No more running, no more uncertainty. They had made their choice. And there, in the quiet of the evening, as the world stretched out before them, Jesse realized that he had found something he never expected. A family, a home, a place where he truly belonged.